Hello, you've been on here a long time.
Hello.
So
How are you doing?
I'm okay. Yeah, sorry about the timing issue.
No, it's I got confused. It's Brandel Zakanuk who mentioned the meeting, and I understood it was at meeting in Brussels, Germany. It was at 4 p.m., but it's now. That's okay.
Yeah, it's 4 p.m. UK time. You said you're in Brussels?
Yes, next door.
Yeah, not very far away indeed. Yeah, we'll be going through a few things. I have to finish an article for ACM Hypertext on some of this stuff. And so I guess we'll be doing a little bit of arguing about HTML today. Of course, there will be also very much a big focus on the VR AR side. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
We have, please pronounce your name so that I may copy you.
Sure. My name is Fabien Benetou.
We have Fabien here today, who's just joined us for the first time, and we'll see who else comes in today. I guess Brendel will be here at least.
My tea.
Just going through the messages from the people. Oh, Mr. Anderson.
Sorry, I just made a cup of coffee. I do apologize.
Oh, Alan hasn't been here for a while, and I have a very important question for him. He said that the new Matrix movie was great, and then he later said it wasn't great, and we need to find out what's going on. That's kind of important.
I'd say that's a balanced review, you know. Good with substandard parts.
Has anyone seen it here?
I think it was ironically great.
Ironically great. Okay. Hang on. Does that mean you're actually French? Are you from Brussels?
Yes, I am.
Ironically great must be the quintessential French phrase. Yes. Hi, Brandel. I hope Adam Wern will be here because we've been arguing furiously on Twitter. But for some useful effect, I think. So that's a good thing.
While we're doing introductory kinds of things, it would be helpful to me if we followed an agenda a little bit. That is, if we're going to talk about HTML, I'm going to leave because that's not an interest of mine, and I know nothing about it and don't intend to do anything about it. If we're going to talk about AR and VR, I will stay, or I will come in when the agenda says we're going to do it. And if there are other topics on the agenda, I would like to know what they would be, and then we can arrange it. And because my time is very squished these days, and maybe other people's are too. I don't know.
You give us such a great compliment by assuming that there's any kind of organization whatsoever. So thank you for the compliment, Bob. That's appreciated. But let me answer your agenda question. There's absolutely no agenda, but when it comes to different kinds of interest and different kinds of angles, we're not going to be talking about HTML in any great detail, but we do need to agree on an approach because I have to hand in the paper for ACM Hypertext. And there's a few questions. We can wait until later on today to go into that, but it is one of the things I would like is to have Tim Berners-Lee work on this as well. Obviously, that would be great. And to do that, it has to, a nice hook is that we also do this with the web. And I think we all agree that it would be useful to do it with the web, but we can't just say, oh, HTML is great, let's just add a few things to it. It has to be something new and useful. So that's why Adam and I have been fighting furiously about useful perspectives earlier on Twitter. But he's not here yet. So why don't we start with Fabien? Would you like to introduce yourself? That could probably be a good and useful introduction for everyone.
Sure, super. Well, actually, I like VR and HTML. And I think one of the most interesting is to bring HTML to VR. In practice, I'm a prototypist and I work on my own and at the European Parliament. The European Parliament has an innovation lab, and basically I built WebXR prototypes there. And I've been managing my wikis and a lot of prototypes around it for 10 plus years, more or less, and including a link I shared a bit earlier with you on bringing e-ink documents to VR in order to manage and organize my notes, because to be honest, that's what gets me going in VR at the moment, or since I started VR, is how to not have all my information stuck behind a very thin wall. I find just that maddening. So yeah, that would be me.
So follow-up questions then immediately. I am Norwegian. Remarkable is a Norwegian company. I have no relationship with them. I love their products. I love the promise, but to me, it seems very much like an information ghetto. So I would really like if you could tell us a little bit more about how you managed to get the information in and out of that environment, because that's important and fascinating.
So yeah, it's so the device itself, honestly, it's the slickest and nicest I've used, but Remarkable has kind of it's using Linux, so you can tinker quite a bit with it, but the interface itself is closed source. So if you hack it, like a proper hack, you can change it, but otherwise it's a bit of a mess. But you can also entirely replace the interface and use another reader, another writer, and then do pretty much whatever you want with it then. But even then, the documents that the Remarkable manages are JSON file, metadata, and then PDF and EPUBs. And EPUBs are just HTML, basically. So in the end, as long as you don't want to tinker with the interface that Remarkable itself provides, you can do quite a bit with it. It's not documented, so you need to figure out everything yourself. But there is a quite active community of hackers that do document, make tools for it. Works well with it.
When's the next time you have to go to the library?
I can hear a little bit of background sound. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but thanks for that. And Brendan, we are introducing Fabienne here today. And one of the things he showed on, yeah, one of the things he showed on Twitter earlier today was taking documents from Remarkable, the paper-like tablets in VR, which is really fascinating. So he's just talking about that now. And Fabienne, Peter just asked in chat if you have a link for the reader software or any.
I'll put all that in the chat.
Do you have a relationship with the Remarkable people, or are you just very clever at hacking?
I'm a happy client. I don't think Remarkable has a relationship with anyone, especially since they got the VC money. There's sort of like no more communication with the community, unfortunately, which is also why I'm going to do a little bit of non-Norwegian product, which is the BindNote, Bind64. Those guys just give the hardware, and the goal is to bring Linux proper without any closed source interface to any hardware, mobile, e-ink, etc. So I think, to be honest, if people are too locked in the Remarkable, the Pine equivalent is, let's say, hardware, at least hardware compatible equivalent. But then you can do, you have to do it though, because they don't provide any software, so it's up to you to implement. But then a very active community. So that's the difference.
Are you able to now show us a little bit? Not everybody saw the work on Twitter. Do you want to do a share screen or share a link or anything? I've looked at that expression. That's an answer right there.
Yeah, I'll try, but yeah, I did not really prepare for this. Can you see my screen?
Yes, slowly coming up now. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I post most of my prototypes on Twitter, and basically that was this, where I have Mozilla Hub, it's the social VR experience, and then the desktop of my Remarkable. So I get the metadata, which include the cover with a preview, and then displayed there. The goal was that I have another prototype for the Remarkable, where basically based on the position of the cover of a document, then I do an action. For example, send the PDF to another device, or annotate it as next research paper to read, or discard or whatever. And why I did that in Hubs is because I can invite other people to collaborate with me on that.
So before I get off my pedestal of asking lots of questions, I have one more before everyone else can dive in, and that is, are you a little bit familiar with, actually that doesn't matter. Here's the real question. In that environment, the way that you use it, can you read the text and the documents through OCR or other means?
So you can read the actual text.
I mean, computationally, not just visually.
Well, yes, because you get the source of the document you're going to send. So in the end, you would use the source itself to read it.
Have you been introduced to our visual meta thing?
I don't think so, no.
It's a really simple thing. Oh, here's Adam. Let me just wait for him to connect. Hey, Adam. Just pause there to wait for you to connect. Actually, Fabian, could you, because Adam's been working on something related all week, could you please do a quick screen share again on what you've been doing?
Yeah, sure.
So Adam, this is from the Remarkable tablets. And this is what Fabian has been doing, which is why him and Brandel talked and why he's here today.
So that's the e-ink device on the left, Remarkable with the desktop of it. And then I bring the different documents to a social VR experience. In order to, that's implemented in another prototype. To be honest, that's the pain in my life. Let's say that I have features per prototype, but honestly, a unifying experiment. But anyway, that's another problem. But in the other experience, then the action applied to a document is based on the position in space, and that's done socially.
Yeah, I needed to, thank you. I needed to show this again to Adam because Adam has brought documents into that same space. We were there the other day. I think he was a fox. It's a funny place. So my question, just as you were entering, Adam, was we have something we call visual meta, and it's based on the metadata being in an appendix at the back of the document. Are you familiar with BibTeX and LaTeX?
No.
Okay.
I mean, yes, I heard about it, but way back.
So I don't want to take too much time on this, but the very simple part of it is, imagine you have a document where in an appendix at the end, it says title equals, and then the name of the title, and new line says author equals the name of the author, and so on. So the document writes out in text what it is, all the metadata. So that's what we are using as part of what we're doing here. And one of the ways we're looking at is how to put that into a VR environment. So of course it can be programmatically, but I find it a bit strange. You can hold up almost like a JPEG of a page, but actually getting that so that it can be used, that metadata, is another issue. So there's both something Brandel and Adam have been looking at, but I'm wondering, as the new guy, how you might want to extract that.
So as the new guy, anything I say is just completely naive, but I'm happy to do that. It's the internet after all. So I would attach. No, I would keep the source actually and pull back from the source. So I would have the document itself, its metadata, and manipulate on that. So. Except if there were like new metadata generated, but I would try to keep one source of truth and ideally the original source.
Okay, that I am satisfied. I'm sure
I
there
put
are
a
many
link
other.
in the chat for Fabian on visual meta.
I saw it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Adam, are you ready to be showing what you've been showing screenshots of today? Because it's so related. I don't know. Where should we go next?
Well, not really. It's not much more than what you've seen on the screenshots. I've just been putting a lot of text on screen. It's hardly interactive. So it's not so much to see really, or I find the idea of, in a way, I've reinvented the zoomable user interface of 2D. It feels like that, actually going from the overview where you see a full all pages at once, and then zooming into any single character. And I like that interaction, having instead of having thumbnails or other representation for the text, letting the text be its own representation is nice. I think of course you want supporting interface elements for that, so you can show titles and kind of navigational metadata that comes and goes when you zoom in and zoom out.
Not everyone has seen what you posted in our Twitter chat. I see Mark and Brendan have questions, but while they're asking questions, could you share some of it with us, please? It would be really good for context, because it's actually quite impressive, despite you being Swedish and I'm Norwegian and I'm a bit jealous.
The problem is that I have one secure Zoom computer that is fenced off from the world so I don't have my working material on that computer. That's why.
You need universal control. That's what you need.
So maybe in a moment. I think I have one thing. Did I pay? I'm a bit. It's busy. My wife is on call right now, so I'm juggling 3 kids here while she's doing the strange 40-hour on-call things. So I can. So I will come back to you. Continue with what you were doing. Yeah, and I'd like to continue the track with Bob's track that we've been discussing on the side, because I think that it's really crucial whether we go 2D or 3D as well.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Mark, you want to go first with a question, or?
Sure. No, well, it's also not so much a question. I popped in a link. People may be well ahead of me on this. I just saw it via my news feeds, but it's a post by Robert Scoble. Not so much because it's him, but I thought it was quite interesting. The gist of the bit that I thought was pertinent was saying that actually, if you're doing sort of more high intensity computing, which I think is, most textual work may well fall in that, apart from the most casual of consumption of sort of, say, reading a book, is something you do sitting down. And saying that, so that it sort of points far more towards doing AR type stuff than VR. And he makes some other points in it, and it's an easily readable blog. But anyway, I put a link in the sidebar, but I just thought that was interesting. And he also happens to mention a certain fruit-based company may or may not be having a VR product sometime soon. That's basically it.
Yeah, it's a good piece. Brendan?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Adam. I typed my question into the chat, but what do you imagine using the Zoomable user interface for? Like what type of activities?
I think visualizing your documents. In a way, we have that in the folder structures of the operating system, but the problem is that it mixes everything in there. In a way, I want the documents and some of the documents pulled out and visualized while hiding lots of other documents that are completely unrelated. So I think a visualization of your local library, we can call it library in a wide sense then, including maybe videos and images and the support material that is thinking material. So one thing is visualizing everything and having it unified in a unified system where you could look at things from afar and also going directly into them. And instead of having textual names for things, actually seeing if it is something visual, you can just show it as a document. If the interface supports quick zooming in and out, then you can have it letting objects be their own representation, so to say. Of course, you can have search and all the other things that we have, but I really like having a visual representation. I like thumbnails, I like book covers, I like everything that represents icons as well, of course. But I like having the visual representations. I like seeing the pages. I like seeing my comments from afar. I want to have that, unify that. It would be very interesting to see an overview of all pages, including your comments and including any graffiti you put on it when you read from afar. So that's it.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess that question's kind of for anyone too. Like I also love a zoomable user interface. So I'm always curious like how people like using it.
I would like to be able to zoom in and zoom through to the next levels of detail a la hypertext. Could I share my screen just to show people what I'm talking about? I'm gonna show detail of that information mural on the wall there, but I can't lift my 27-inch screen to go over there right now. Sorry, folks, that isn't part of the technology yet. But I'm popping up this on my desktop, and if I can share my screen, if you'll let me share my screen.
Yeah, that's all enabled.
All right. All right, then can people see it now? I'm moving it. Please let me know if
I can't read it, but I can see it.
All right, but we can. I think we can zoom in on it if I got the PDF there. If I got the JPEG, I'm not so sure.
I put a link. I found it online, so there's a link to the
also
PDF
online.
there.
Yes, it's also online. But here's zooming in, right? How do you like that? And moving around, of course, is kind of difficult right now because I can't, I can't find the little thing. Oh, here we go. Over here at the corner is where I can make it larger or smaller in the screen, and backing out and so forth. And what this enables, and this has been done, this kind of visual display is done for groups, not especially, although it could be, I use it for my individual, for organizing my individual information as well. But most of the work in the world is done with teams of people who have to get on the same page. And this is a same page thing. What it shows is on the left-hand side, the far left-hand side, the history, the relevant history of nuclear waste accumulation. And the middle part, oh golly, my next person is calling. Jim, can I call you back?
Yes.
Thank you, bye. And the middle part shows the decision-making area, which I call the near present. It goes into a little bit into the past and a little bit into the future. That's where decision makers sit. I've been one. I worked with huge numbers of them, and that's what they do. And then the far right side of this shows the 40,000-year plan for nuclear waste disposal in the United Kingdom. And the tangle of arrows shows some of the anticipated problems, which the people in the decision-making team in the near present has to address. I can zoom in on some of those in case you want to see what some of them look like. Oops. Well, the zoom, I guess it's, I could use a little bit better zoomable tool in some sort of way. All right, maybe that's a problem one of you folks can work on. But here's some of the tangle of problems that are anticipated for the 40,000-year plan for nuclear waste disposal. And of course, we can zoom in a little farther. All decisions are short-term. Criteria for site selection. Need to keep options open. Up closer to up in here. I don't know if you can see my cursor. It's right next to Her Majesty's decision, government's decision on how to handle radioactive waste. They hadn't adopted the nuclear waste plan at the time I did the mural. There's a whole set of questions which could be zoomed through, what I think of as zoom throughable or hypertext behind any one of those that the team that is looking, is using the mural as their reference point to address the problem of the day. So I'll just stop there, and if there are any questions or anything like that, go ahead, Rhoda.
No, I was just going to say we're getting into quite a lot of specifics on nuclear waste disposal as opposed to the visualization, but I think Brendel has a question.
Yeah, no, I watched your presentation of this from 20. Sorry, I'm just. So I watched your presentation, the breaking the walls of organizational ignorance on this, and I was really taken by it and wanted to know a little bit more about it. So how do you know sort of roughly how much information is in this? How many pages, if this was a book, how many pages this book would be?
There are.
Not that it should be.
See, I think of these are little chunks of information. There are probably about 200, or give or take 50 chunks of what in ordinary text we call paragraphs or something like that. Labeled paragraphs. Here I call them information blocks or chunks. Some people call them snippets in our previous conversations in this room. And there are also about the same number of visual elements, as I would call it. So something in the order of 400 to 600 combinations of visual and textual.
Yeah, that makes sense. So probably roughly 100 pages, if you imagine like sort of 5 paragraphs 4 or 5 paragraphs a page kind of thing.
I would. That's Brendan. I would say behind each one of the small chunks here, there would, one would expect to have a page of information or even a whole document, because we created these chunks from those documents.
Oh, I see. So these are sort of just reference handles to deeper information that NIREX has. That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, because my next question was going to be, before you're pulling this out at all, was have you seen structured writing sort of represented within a zooming user interface? But of course, the NIREX mural is sort of natively zoomable by virtue of the fact that people can walk in and out of it. Because the size of the type sort of provides its own sort of zoom basis. Have you experienced or have you been involved with anything that uses sort of substantially even more different type size for this? one of the things that has occurred to me when I've been in museums and art galleries is that there's often sort of a 10 times or more difference in the type size between the things that you see as you walk into a door, walk into a gallery versus the things that you see sort of the little name cards next to art pieces. So I'm curious that there are very different type sizes in this, but have you seen people sort of really leverage the notion of a freely zooming thing? Because even this still has an implicit zoom range in terms of the size of the cafeteria it was deployed in, and the maximum distance that you can sort of expect to read at and things like that.
One of the things that I've mostly made these for not for online use, but for non-COVID conditions where people can walk up to them. And one of the things that human beings are very good is that we have legs and eyes, and we can move closer or farther back from a mural like that very easily. And in fact, a group of 6 or 8 or 10 people can get up out of their chairs and gather around one of these, just as one can, as you're suggesting, in a museum. Yes, one, you know, I think there's a lot of experimentation to be done. I've mainly, when I worked on this, worked on what's the problem today. I mean, the mural that you see here was first made for the team of scientists and administrators in this agency who were planning for a blue ribbon government review of their whole program. And the managing director says, we've got to get aligned. We've got to get our whole team of 60 or 70 people, mostly scientists and administrators, all on the same page. How do we do that? That's your job, Mr. Horn. So, you know, that took a considerable process, but it's one which they can continue to use. And they then, after we had this print, we can print these out, of course, on roughly 4 foot by 12 foot segments on these large printers. They have printed one out, laminated it, and put it in their cafeteria, so that as you go through the line in the cafeteria when you're not looking at the food, you're looking at the mural. And it's used there for briefing purposes, for example. Other ones of mine are used in boardrooms of major companies. For example, I saw one in the boardroom of Weyerhaeuser, which is a big American forestry company, a mural that I made for the next 40 years of sustainability. This is a way, for me, this is a way of being able to think about larger subjects and yet drill down and keep the it's one of those things of how do we keep the context? How do we manage context? And I think we do that differently individually, which this you know, this morning and other mornings like this in the future of text discussions are very important. How we do it for ourselves, but also then how we do it for teams of people who are decision makers, who are going to be making decisions about the next 40,000 years.
And I'm curious, sorry, Mark, stop asking questions one day.
And don't forget, you wanted to ask Bob about this as well.
I did.
Oh,
He replied in private to it. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of playing with it and seeing what possibilities there might be to get it into a print on demand. In your experience building these things, I mean, a mural obviously has a canonical view. You don't get to move the pieces of information around based on the user and things like that when it's printed out and laminated. What are your thoughts on having a canonical view or a singular view of the spatial arrangement of information like this versus having something that can kind of be flexibly rearranged. Because obviously one significant and important benefit of this is that everybody will always agree where all of the pieces of information are. So if you want to find something, you just need to go to the same spot, and it has the ability to trigger, basically a proprioceptive sort of awareness of space. But that, obviously then the downside is that it only has one modality. It only has the ability to present one view of that thing. Have you seen or experienced alternatives where things move around, and what's your take on the sort of relative benefits and things?
Well, it's certainly possible. I could put up the Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator version of this, and you guys, if you could say move that, or if one could, share screens and actually use my Adobe Illustrator. I don't know if that's possible. You can move things around. What I have experienced is at the University of Illinois, Chicago, 6 years ago, maybe, they have a large screen that is a computer-driven screen that is 5 feet high and 26 feet long. I put, 15 or 20 or 25 of my murals over in little postage stamp size, and just clicking on them, they would pop out. And then the students, or in this case it was students, but anybody in the room who had laptops and wanted to change to at least add things to it or add comments to it, could do it from where they were sitting. So they had the beginnings of an interaction with a standard one without being able to move things around. But in principle, we could move things around, and in principle, we'd want the link to the documents, the Zoom throughable documents behind them to be still attached, so we don't lose them, and so forth. But that's about as far as we are, at least as far as I am. I don't know if other people have moved further on this. I don't know.
I sent a link to the people in the Twitter group, but not to that whole email of some work that Jim Holland has been doing on document agnostic information spaces, where he is disinterested or has a hostility to the idea of an application or of a document, but that, you have information that you collect in a space such that you can sort of go into and go through and past. I think that this has very interesting parallels to what you're describing of actually being able to get to the detail that's actually beyond the level of detail represented in this poster. So I think there's some really interesting things there.
I don't want to monopolize this conversation. It's just I just wanted to present one extra possibility. And so I'll if it's agreeable, I'll close down this one. I'm very happy. You have my email, and it's hornbob@earthlink.net. And I'd be happy to, anybody who wants to drill into this sort of thing, I'm very happy to Zoom with you sometime over the next month or so.
Thank you. Yeah, I think something that will be pretty low hanging fruit actually is to put this in a virtual reality at that 40-foot size that you described, and just walk along it. Just have teleportation ability, and I think that'd be really neat as a representation, because obviously everybody at NIREX had in the before times the ability to experience information at the scale, but it's something that anybody could have with a headset, so that'll be fun to play with. So I definitely intend to do that. Thank you.
I have the shared copyright to all of 40 or 50 of these kinds of murals, at different dimensions, and so we can play with any of them and use them as experimental material.
I think that would be really, really interesting to be able to kind of yield up in an environment like that, because
and I offer it to this group.
Thank you.
It would be interesting. I saw some of Adam's tweets, which he's keeping secret because of a separate machine. How many characters were you able to put into the environment? It was quite a large number, right?
Yeah, 500,000 characters flying through. Let's see. I moved it to my Zoom computer now. It's not that secret. It just that I have.
I know. I'm just
machine.
egging you on, but
yeah. It sounds like I wouldn't like I
Yeah.
do something secret. But
no.
let me share this.
Hang on, Adam. Just briefly before that, just really briefly. An additional thing that would be very interesting is to take Bob's poster as it is and put it into a space like that, just to see, because it's how many megabytes is the actual PDF, Bob? Do you know, or anyone else?
1 second.
Because even that, without any further
2.7
refinement-
megabytes.
Sorry.
2.7 megabytes.
So that should render well, right? That would be an interesting experiment, wouldn't it, guys? Without any hyper things happening. Lots of nodding and thumbs, and for the record. Okay, sorry, over to you, Adam. I just wanted to run that past you guys.
So let's see. Can you see my screen? This is the prototype I did before with a flat where you drag things out to the margin and keep them, the active reader thing. And then I moved it into 3D. So now we render a text in 3D. Is this visible to you?
Yep, looks great.
So the idea is it's the same thing. It's nothing magic about 3D because text is pretty flat in its in its usual form. But I wanted to just try to see what happens if you drag things out in 3D and place it in 3D. How does it feel, basically? So this is on the screen. You drag out or clip out interesting parts of a document to the side and build new kind of small either summaries. I imagine that you could do summaries of the document. For example, to the left you do summaries, and to the right there is no real margin, but it's floating in space now. But that you can continue reading actively, I think, is a thing I'm doing here, because it's so easy to scan documents. I really want a more active view of it, taking objects or taking text out, rearranging it, and writing your own notes here. So I'm just playing with the idea, how will this feel in 3D? Taking flat documents, pulling things out, but in a way that it's actually in more dimensions. So I imagine that you could curve the text or put it in other directions. I haven't done that yet, and I want to combine this with the hand gestures. So you actually pull the text out with your hands and put it in whatever direction you want, up, down, so you can rotate it by your hands, because that is one thing that I find so fascinating with hand interaction, is that rotating objects, which is quite messy in regular interfaces, in flat interfaces, is so easy in 3D or with the hands to put things on the side and in strange angles. So this combined with, let's see.
Adam, when you say in 3D, you meant in virtual reality 3D rather than click your mouse on a screen 3D, right?
Yep.
Your hands.
Yep. It would be nice to have your hands available in front of a flat screen as well, but it presents other problems, because then you need to project the hands a bit into the screen, I guess, to see where it is in the screen. Brandel, I may know more about that. Didn't you do?
Yes.
How was that to project it on the screen on a flat screen?
There's a device. So I mean, you can do it optically if you have a system that is able to do 2D image-based segmentation, and Google may have out-of-the-box solutions for that, but otherwise, a vision system that makes use of the implied foreshortening of finger joints and things will be able to kind of recover joint pose. But what I used was something called a leap motion. It's about an $80 little thing, the shape of a USB stick or a thick USB stick. And it's got a couple of infrared cameras and a couple of infrared floodlights with pulse width modulation lights, so that it does that shape recovery, but from multiple vantage points. And then you end up you have a position in space that it sort of corresponds to, and then you can make it so that it's always relative to the camera position, or you can have a locked off camera, or you can tape it to the front of a head mounted display, which is what most people have done with them in practice. I think it's actually sort of stock on things like the Vario XR1. That's the way that they facilitated this, by making use of an ultraleap device. But yeah, it's very, very straightforward if you don't want to do it in VR. But if you do want to do it in VR, then you can just use an Oculus Quest with hand tracking enabled, and you get the same thing. So yeah.
Adam, have you been in VR with this, or have you not built it for VR 3D yet?
No, I haven't been, because you need to sell your soul to be a developer, signing all NDAs to get things, to get debugging. It's quite a
But can't you
No.
use WebXR, as Fabienne is asking, and some of those?
Yeah, but then I need to debug the things, especially when I work with hands. I need to.
Sorry to interrupt, but
Yep.
you can indeed. I don't like Meta, to be very direct, but they do good hardware, sadly, very sadly. You don't need to register, I think, for anything, especially if you can have a second-hand Quest 1. And more importantly, you can debug with, for example, Firefox to Volvic, an experimental open source browser, with remote debugging. So you still do have quite a bit of...
Okay, yeah, I started walking down that track, but it was quite old versions of Firefox, and I gave up along the way. I will continue that, and we'll try it.
It's been updated last week, because Igalia has started to take over from Firefox Reality, so it's alive again.
Okay, nice. So the idea is to answer Brendan's question again here. What I was imagining, it was combining the kind of, here is a future textbook, 500,000 characters on screen right now. The idea is to see the articles, the length of the articles, and to get the sense of it, and color code it in some way. Now it's just random colors for different articles. And of course, it's not very readable to read text like this with this contrast, but to have it in a distance, I want to see the labels with the names of the articles, but also color coding for things I like, or different, if it's about typography or far future of text or something. So a way of color coding it, and immediately stepping into an article with this other view combined, so you can actually see your own comments and the things you pulled out of that view in place here. So that's one way of doing it, and there is a kind of this fundamental conflict between having a fixed layout, coming back to this view every time you visit the future of a textbook, which is good for remembering things, but and the other idea is to actually just bring in new articles every time, shape your view, make it be very dynamic, but then you get then you lose the sense of location that I find very valuable myself. So this is what I've been playing with, but I really like having this kind of fluid. There is no, you don't jump into the document really. You see many articles, but you still you can see an overview with some articles. You can see an overview with all articles. You can browse, look at your comments from a distance, and then you can go in and actually read I really like that interaction. It removes so much of the interface. So I think it's really worth exploring. So and this is 3D now. I just locked the view, so so it looks very flat. But of course, you can spread it out over walls or cylinders or anything else that you like. So that's what I've been playing with this week, just showing lots of text and getting a sense.
I think we're all very impressed. It's really cool. In terms of the numbers, Adam, if you count every character and space as a character, you have 1 million characters right there.
500,000, I think, right now. But it doesn't feel like that is a...
No, but in the book, if you count every character, including spaces, it is actually a million units.
Okay, and I have half of the articles here right now, so it adds up.
Yeah. Now, obvious question, obviously, as a community, we need to help you get it into VR ASAP. VR ASAP, that should be a new acronym. So we can all play it with our Oculuses. But also things like Ted Nelson's visible lines for citations. We need to start playing with that, because that means I can send Ted an email and he can say, what, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll come and then he'll be very loud in a presentation and very useful, asking all kinds of weird questions. What do you think of trying to implement that at some point?
Yeah, I'm not too big on lines. Here I do the opposite, where I hover over and highlight the corresponding passage.
I'm not saying the line should be there all the time, Adam. I think that just like you said, if you change the view, you need a way to snap back to a default view. The way that you can hide stuff absolutely becomes completely important. I think that's going to be a major, major a research effort, how to hide things as it is to how to show things. And I'm going to shush a bit while Mark and then Peter says something.
Yep.
I'll come back to the thing I was originally going to raise, because that was just really interesting watching Adam's stuff, and I'm thinking, yeah, yes, I was. And when you said, well, okay, but you keep having to come back to the start place. Well, I thought you're innately talking about trails. So if your start place is sort of a bit beyond the front door, as long as there's an ability to, in a sense, I mean, for you might know where you left off, but if you wanted to allow somebody else to enter the space and get to the same starting point, essentially you're just describing a sort of trail. Don't start here, walk into the room next door, turn right, as it were, if we're in a physical space. So that's quite interesting. Yeah, I too saw all those things and I thought of one of sort of Ted's early demos, so sort of Xanadu and things. The interesting point though is, of course, his thing was all about same text effectively turning up in different places, and that actually happens very infrequently. Sometimes, I mean, the thing is, it's really hard to get probably a data set that's just sitting floating around there that's got an awful lot of quoted stuff. But what we do have is we've got the ACM in reference citation. So if you can live with the fact that the references are not tied to specific text blocks either end, we already have a corpus of just over 1,000 nodes with links between them, and we could play around with that. And I had a look. Noda, actually, I'll have to put some money in their pocket, but and I'm going to be away for a week or so soon. But when I come back, that I have a try at that, because they will allow a CSV import. Because when I look at some of these, I mean, I think it's, one or two people said already, they look a bit rinky-dink, because you get in there and you make a couple of blobs in space and pull a line. I don't want to start there. I want to start with several hundreds of items and things. Just making the blobs isn't really that sexy. It's actually seeing a developed network hypertext in a 3D space and saying, well, is it completely impossible to understand, or can I start to do things with it? So that's another angle. I'd agree this thing about, yes, I think part of the journey here is figuring out how we hide things. And I do think from your from Adam's experiments last year with again with the ACM data, this idea of being able to just effectively dim stuff down so you reduce its visual salience, is that feels a very right way to go, because you don't want to lose the data. You just want to push some things so they are less prominent. Or they may be hidden, I mean, they may be visually hidden completely, but they're actually sort of there, as it were, they're present in the data set you're playing with. They're just not visualized this second, because the whole idea is to reduce noise and concentrate things there. I'll just loop back to the earlier thing. It won't surprise some here that when I saw Bob sing, I thought, oh, that looks like a hypertext to me. It's his big thing. And my immediate thought is, well, what I'd really like to see is, at this point, I'm less interested in the picture. I'd like to see all the bits that went into it and all the links, and then basically map that back onto the picture. Because one interesting thing is he rightly said, okay, I can put up this thing, or, thinking of some work Fabian is doing, some European government or something, that if you've got some big picture you want to show, but we're not supposed to be getting on an aircraft these days and flying around and burning carbon. So if I can sit in my town or in my house and I can look at this and I can interact with it, and then a sort of enhanced VR, a sort of an AR in VR, is I can look at this thing. So, oh, right, I need to know more about this. I want to know more about this. And I can just pull that information forward from it. And that seems that none of that to me strikes me as innately, it's work to do, but it's not innately complex. I mean, we've got the sort of bits to do that. And it seems to me a really interesting project to do. Here is something that exists. Can we take something that arguably already works, because it has been working already, and can we make it better? And that to me constitutes a valid test. And the answer may be no, but we won't know if we don't try. But the thing is, there is a complete. I think that the lesson I've learned on the way is take something that's already complete and do something with it, because the amount of time it takes to make up data only means you end up with something that still isn't nearly as random as you wanted it to be, or difficult. So I'm quite interested in us, from our various sort of skills, doing something more potentially with that.
Yeah. So Bob just rejoined in the middle of that. The thing that that Mark was talking about, Bob, was with something like that NIREX mural, having access to the bibliography, and he said that looks like a hypertext to me, and so what possibilities there might be to be able to navigate the information beyond that page as well. If you have
if you take the hypertext and feed it through the rollers, that's what you end up with, and that's not being rude to Bob, but I mean in the sense that so it's been flattened for a very deliberate purpose, and very carefully structured into a 2D surface. But the fun would be to explode that back out into its sort of n-dimensional bits, and then reattach it to the 2D surface inside VR. So the point being that we can step from the actual mural on the wall into the same artifact in a virtual space, but then effectively have an augmented reality experience in the virtual space, because I'm suddenly interested in ethical policy, or I'm interested in just dystopian future or whatever, but I want to know more about this point. I was going to say, it's unfortunate all the hard work done by NIREX and our government is still turning our little island into a massive dumpster fire. So. Anyway, Peter.
Interesting. Peter, do you have something on that or something different?
A couple different things. First of all, I'm pasting in a link to a YouTube video of a system for doing 3D zoomable interfaces, and that actually, if you look at the video, will actually like turn and twist to look at the perspective from different angles as it goes through. It looks like there's some sort of a paid web app that has some of the functionality of Blender's Grease Pencil, but with a simplified interface for creating multi-layered sketches that can also turn and move off at a different angle in 3D space from the simple flat-on view that you normally see. It also occurs to me that it would be nice to have some sort of a system of spatially constrained 3D dragging, to ensure that instead of being able to arbitrarily twist something in any direction where you might actually wind up having the text that you're trying to comment on show up edge on and not even realize where it is anymore, basically have like a pre-done 3D glide path that you could move things on to preset nodes, sort of like a snap to grid, only in 3D for moving things around in 3 space. I think that'd be a really handy affordance to try to experiment with. I wanted to ask Adam what libraries he's using to build that wonderful visualization he showed us. Also, I wanted to mention that if anyone on your local television can get a viewing of J Arena, which is an NHK program from Japan, they had the episode this week on superhuman sport. And that was basically focusing on new AR and VR based sports that were being developed in Japan. Absolutely fascinating. There is a game called Hado, which is an AR game where you're actually generating representations of 3D shields in front of you and firing energy balls at opponents while running around on an actual court, which of course has all the advantage of your movement being under your control as opposed to you being moved in 3 space. So presumably those players, the way they're running around, they're obviously not having any sim sickness issues whatsoever, or they'd be keeling over on the court, which they're clearly not doing. So that was very intriguing. There's also a Superhuman Sport Academy. I'll try to find the link and paste that into the chat. And that's basically everything that I had piled up in the queue.
Thanks for that. The mental canvas is pretty interesting. I have seen it before, but I think it was very relevant that you brought it up here. Any specific comments on that or on to
I've got a quick one. What that made me think of is, I don't know, I'm sure there's probably a sort of a word for it, but you know, there's people who sort of, you have a conference or something and someone's basically drawing, you know, busy, it's marvelous, you know, drawing as it were in real time and doing that. And I thought, when I saw the video that Peter posted, my mind went to the idea of, well, you know, normally they do that on a piece of paper at the side of the room. Well, if that effectively is being done and effectively put into a virtual space, then you can begin to do again, and sort of then thinking back to, you know, Bob's long infographic sort of thing. Well, you could begin to be augmented that. So effectively another person, for instance, could be augmenting that with information so that you not only have this nice stylized, you know, deliberately stylized, but engaging presentation of the subject matter at hand, but you actually have in pretty close time actual factual actionable links. Because I think these things are quite interesting. I go back to the, I recall the thing, you know, Bob mentioned about the fact about indecision makers, and I know some of this is a term of derision for many, but you know, there are poor benighted people who have to sit there and make difficult decisions based on, frankly, far less information than they like or have time to assemble. So yeah, making things more accessible is a good and valuable societal tool, I think. So I find all this really quite exciting because, you know, I mean, it may be a long way away from entertainment and that kind of thing, but it is a really useful building block, you know, because I dusted this off me back to it. And I'm very aware that, you know, I'm very aware of the point of we're 30 years on from the time frame where this is referenced, but I don't think that invalidates a lot of the ideas in it at all. You know, it's just that it might look a bit different. We did it now, but you know, because printers moved on things. But that's, you know, I see through all that, and I still think this idea of, it goes back to this earlier conversation we had about having more useful tables of contents in the loosest sense of the word, so not necessarily in the print sense, but just having a richer indexing to objects, you know, that decomposes down as far as you need to. Again, lends itself to this sort of presentation, I think.
If we had a tool like that, boy, I sure could have used it over the last 20 years. By the way, all the information mural work that I've just been showing, the nuclear waste and other murals, was all conceived after writing mapping hypertext. I had no idea of what I would be called upon to make these large murals when I was writing mapping hypertext. But I used the notion of the chunking of information in particular, the the sections on information mapping and argumentation mapping and so forth are parts of that. By the way, we also did a major argumentation mapping project for the same UK agency in charge of nuclear waste disposal, because you have to be able to, when you've got very complex information, you have to be able to structure it in different ways.
Yeah.
And they needed to be able to show why the plans that they had made, the 40,000-year plans, why certain aspects of them had to be the way they are.
Yeah.
And not the way some other possibilities were. And behind those, I mean, they have documents, they all had documents. And my colleague who was there in the UK was reading many of those documents. Fortunately, I didn't have to. But that's a team effort. Always, again, it was on our side as well as on their side.
And I mean, another interesting part of the potential deconstruction is that obviously, if I look at this sort of, this big mural, the textual passages self-evidently sort of suggest themselves as being some kind of hypertextual object, because it must come from, there's some text was taken from somewhere, so that object exists, so go find it. The more interesting part is then said, well, what about what you might call the purely visual elements? So there's some deliberate streaming in there. We got the horizontal strands in different topics, the timeline, but there are, there are effectively visual prompts on the arrows and things. And there's an interesting, I mean, I don't know the answers, but I can see that's another interesting sort of thing to be done, which is to work out, again, what of the non-textual part also lends itself to some form of enhancement, or because the whole idea is you've got to this point, so I need to know more about this bit as you sort of prod your finger into it, and hopefully you'll get something back. And obviously, if it's a little box with text on, you probably get the source of that text. And in a well-structured metadata set, you'd not only have that text, but you'd have the on links from it. And that's where we still see things like visual meta being in the round, trying to help with the glue of all of that. But yes, that's it just comes to me as I say this, is how you do the same with some of the more purely visual. Can
I respond? If you're going to go on to another topic and you want to, that's fine. But you like me to respond to the one you just.
I'm happy. Afraid you're in the chair. And I see people have their hands up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, especially if it goes into kind of the digital realm, I think that's very worthwhile. But please, Paul, continue.
Well, yes, he asked about the visual elements that tie together, in some cases, structure for us perceptually, in other cases. I have another book called Visual Language, is also out of print, which is downloadable from my website. Although again, a badly one which the Internet Archive did, where they all it's intended to be read as a double-page spread, but they digitally scanned it as single pages. So you have a little extra problem to putting those together. But anyway, that from a linguistic standpoint, it is an analysis of the visual and verbal elements and how they, at least as far as we could determine 20 years ago, that these are integrated in many different ways. Also, since then, for example, one of the things that I found was that arrows have a great many different meanings. I've collected and got somewhere on my hard drive a visualization of 213 meanings of arrows, which I have illustrated. That is, these are not theoretical. These are found in actual documents, which I, of course, do not have the references for anymore because I wasn't doing that. and it wasn't possible either at the time. It still isn't possible. So there's work to be done to incrementally have the tools for thinking. and for manipulating the things that we want to do.
Absolutely, Bob. Completely agree. And that brings me up to the reason I have my hand up, which is, I can do a lot in Photoshop. I can video edit. We all have different technical skills. But the kind of thing that Adam showed today, that I know that Fabienne and of course Brandel also do, I don't currently have the skills to do that. And it is a huge source of frustration, obviously. For me to say, oh, Adam, could you possibly try so-and-so? And I think it's getting more and more important for us to do more and more kinds of experiments. So I'm wondering, could we even, I have a tiny budget for this, but could we even pay someone to make an environment in whatever Fabian, Adam, and Brandel thinks would be the best technical environment, where all they do is allow for the import of text through whatever means we decide on, and then a huge amount of parameters we can mess around with. Because, the creative tension here, we have to decide what to do. I mean, it is an amazing time to be alive. I have made a word processor and a PDF viewer that most of you are aware of course. Cost me a huge amount of money on a personal level. Someone else did the actual work, but the fact that it's even possible is absolutely amazing. That I am not Microsoft and I could do that. And it's as powerful as some of the competing platforms. How can we get to a point of doing that here? Does anyone have some technical suggestions on this?
I mean, that's one of the rationales that I have for being able to make use of HTML to turn it into virtual realities, is dropping the general skill level required in order to make use of it. I'm very interested in pursuing a conversation with the people who create and maintain Troika to see if they would be interested in making use of the approach that I've taken for being able to render an entire document with its structure and hierarchy, rich text and markup into their system, because their signed distance field text rendering is obviously superior. So I mean, but like facilitating that makes it easier and makes it more reachable by people who have basic HTML editing as a skill. If people have no development capacity whatsoever, it doesn't help them too much. But in terms of how many people can do what, I think that's a very important sort of first target, and then sort of getting those examples out there so that people are actually aware of and interested in it. I appreciate your notion of paying people for it, but I also think that if you can get a ready audience of undergraduates who are aware of the possibilities for information manipulation and things like that, then that is very exciting to me, because I think that, as I've said in the past, most people believe virtual reality at this point is mostly for entertainment. And so having the opportunity and ability to play around with it for expressive and productive purposes is something that can both, justify the expenditure of their headsets for their computer science department and personally, but also be something that can kind of provide a rationale and a basis for further study and things. So I think that relationships with schools and just popularizing what kind of capabilities and opportunities exist and what little skill is required, particularly on the basis of as a result of what happens with my WebGLizer stuff and Troika and all of these other systems. Making those as approachable as possible it does about as much as expecting to pay anybody to do it as well.
Yeah, that's really worthwhile, and thanks for that, Brandel. Fabian, I see you have your hand up, but just a little bit more on this topic. Adam and I have been sparring today a little bit over HTML, visual meta, and all of that stuff. And I think it's becoming really, really important. And I think we need to decide on a few things, not in every great detail, but I have to submit soon the ACM hypertext paper on visual meta, where I introduced the fact that we're going into HTML and VR. So it may be at a different forum we can go into that, because what I wrote earlier today in the paper that I'm writing, we should probably do two things. In the header of the HTML page, dump the entire normal visual meta as we make it today. Just put it in there. but then also have one version that follows the syntax of HTML more clearly. And then, of course, we get into the issue of how do we do the addressing. When we say a certain heading is special, how do we make sure it's the right heading? Also, the glossary, there is a way, of course, in HTML to deal with the glossary. Now, how do we put those things in? Because I could relatively easily have author export to this special HTML. It's not a problem. It's very close to what we already do. And then we can start having an experiment where when Adam has the view that he just has, instead of a dead link and citation and brackets that has nothing behind it, if we together as a community back and forth fight for the best idea of the system, knowing that when something in brackets, it has a certain meaning. But remember, I only have 10 days to do that, which means extremely little time in terms of this community, because we don't meet very often, only twice a week, of course. So does anyone have any ideas on that? And does anyone have any suggestion how to deal with that offline? Is that something that maybe those who have a perspective on it can maybe put in a blog post or in an email or something, and then we just fight it out that way? Because we all have the same goal, so let's just go at it, right? Because then we can have real documents. I mean, my thesis is quite long, as it should be, has a huge amount of references, all of it's properly done. If I export into this new thing, then instantly we have a large document with a huge amount of citations and all that stuff that we can start working with. And a lot of other stuff we can put in. Anyway, yeah, please think about that. I'm going to give the baton over to Fabian and then Bob and Adam.
So I'll share my screen briefly again. Two little things that I hope might help this. Of course, you still at some point development, because it's defining new data structure, new ways to interact. But this was a little example. I'm muted. But where my friend and colleague is in VR playing with a game, and then I'm programming and updating the game live as they are. And I think as an affordance, in order to it has to be prepared, of course. You can't build a game from scratch, otherwise the person spends half a day in the headset. If they're really patient, why not? But otherwise, you can toggle blocks of code and experiments. And I think to explore, that's a pretty good way to do it. And the other thing is a little homage I did for papers, where basically you do your block-based programming in VR. That's also in Hub, so it's also social, so you can guide someone through. And then you have a list of instruction steps. You move them around, let's say on a panel, it runs basically the script you want to do. And I think it means the person who is using it can find a way to script in VR to the content they want to manipulate. So it doesn't solve, let's say, the core of the issue, where you still have to have someone that's going to code those either blocks or to be able to collaborate live. But I think there are better ways now to just, let's say, send specification to someone and say, implement this, especially at the stage, if I understood correctly. Again, I'm very naive about the whole process, but that there are still maybe more questions than answer, and just like, let's build this.
Yeah, super cool. Thank you. Was that in response to what we're just talking about, or did you also have something else since you have your hand up, Fabian?
Yeah, I had something before. Thank you. That in my opinion, I forgot who mentioned it, but about grids, I think positioning on a grid. To me, that's been the biggest challenge. That on one hand, you have VR that provides you arguably natural affordances, like for free, you get a world in front of you, which is pretty amazing. And then you can move and all that. You know all this. But what's been very hard for me is what's not natural anymore, but in a good way, let's say. So snapping on a grid, for example, at some point, it's supernatural. It's something you couldn't do, let's say, in real life. But that's the kind of affordance that makes the tool even more interesting, in addition of what you get for free in the properties of VR. But I have no idea, except of what I've done by experimentation. And that's also why I think one of the, let's say, the break Victor ways of making the time to the fastest time to iteration when you have this idea is, in my opinion, so fundamental.
Thanks very much. Bob, are you here? I can't see you, but I can see your hand.
Yeah, I've decided in Zoom when I'm not interested in the topic that being discussed to turn off my visual.
But you forgot to take your hand down. That was a mixed message.
Well, no, I wanted to respond to the previous question, which I think it was you who proposed it, and that is, I have to ask: are you really serious about wanting some money to do some serious work on the kind of problems, at least that I was showing today and people were discussing? If you are, then there are ways that groups get together and do that. And one of the things they do is they accumulate, you have a way of organizing and accumulating the problems that we see are addressed. And then we have a way of discussing which ones of those are of priority first. And then we write a proposal, and there are proposals that are fundable in Europe by the European Commission and maybe other places. You have to go through that kind of process. And if you're not willing, if you're not serious about this, then, then we're just in a discussion.
Well, that was very pointed, Bob. The thing is,
Yeah.
The community is fundamentally about the future of text. So there are many different aspects we talk about. I think we're very close to having our 100th conversation. And as you know, we've had 10 annual symposium and 2 books. And now we have a journal and a newsletter. So we're very serious, but it's also a matter of, we don't want to just settle down and become a company either. So it's a matter of finding the best ways to experiment and be inspired and do something. One of the key things that we're working on is this whole visual meta thing. And yes, I know it's my PhD thesis, and I'm not saying everybody needs to use it, but I am saying that it is very, very important to combine rich metadata. Things need to know what they are. The origin of that thought for me was the game development, the game called Crisis, which was one of the first large world games. I read an article in Edge magazine by one of the designers. I haven't been able to find it, to my detriment, where the designer said making the AI, which is what the article was about, wasn't that hard. What the key was to make sure that everything in the game knows what it is. So a piece of wood needs to know how much force to break it. Can it be seen through? Can it burn? All of these things need to be known. That way you can have a richly interactive environment. Are you shaking your head?
I'm saying not all the things, as soon as you put in all, I think you're wrong. I think selectively important things need to be connected, yes, and know about each other, but not everything. But anyway, please go on, because again, you're not addressing at least you're saying to me, for the last, what you've just said, is that this group at least is not the group that's going to be serious about the kind of questions that I could have used last year on these projects and the last 20 years. And if they're not interested in that, in actually making progress on it, I'm saying actually making progress on it. And that is done by identifying what the gaps are now, and writing a proposal and getting it funded and doing it.
Yes, but Bob, this is not a community for one thing. That's kind of important to keep in mind. So let's be careful with the use of the word serious, because we are all very serious, but at different aspects, and we have different priorities. We don't have a CEO, we don't have funding, and that may not even be the best thing to go about. We have a tiny amount of funding we can use a little bit, but we're not just going to make interactive augmented text murals. But that will be part of it. We're also not just going to use my thing, visual meta, but that will be part of it. We're also not just going to be using data sets that Mark Anderson has arranged for us. will be part of it, etc. What we're trying to do is what a commercial organization cannot do, and that is have the freedom to be a little frustrated in trying to implement, but also the freedom to think in different directions. And that is quite important as well, because otherwise we would, I mean, talking of which, one of the notes I have here, I got an email from the company Immersed, who makes virtual screens and VR where you can immerse yourself in work. They would like to present to the group, and I emailed some of you about that. I'm wondering if that's an appropriate monthly meeting we should have, or will that be too commercial? So as a side question, what do you guys think of that, having a presentation from Immersed?
I mean, from what I've seen, their heart is in the right place in terms of producing sort of VR productivity sort of innovations, but I would be curious. I mean, it would be really nice to make sure that we can sort of temper the conversation beforehand so that it's not a general sales conversation, because I think that there's a distinct possibility that their thinking in that context would end up being pretty superficial and being like, you got screens. And it's like, yeah, we know. We've been talking about this. So so if it's possible to kind of make sure that they have forewarning that what is most interesting is the conceptual basis on which you decide to put things on screens and have them in places, and what sort of consequences come from having arbitrary space for that, a la the big murals and things, then absolutely. But in the event that they think that it's just another organization to sell stuff to, then that's going to be pretty boring until we can pull them up and actually talk about what they've learned and what they understand as the sort of the nature of information in these new spaces.
Yeah, I would strongly agree with that.
I want to respond at least to say I was not suggesting a commercial application. That's something that Frode added a frame to my comments, which I reject. I was talking about getting research money from the European Union. And there's a project that we worked on of 5 or 6 years ago that would be on resources for the European community, where there are documents behind. I made 3 murals and there are documents behind them, and so the material is there, and the union proposal could be made for the European Union to keep this up to date, so to speak. Because information like the research project that we had, which was several million euros, was over, and then that was done, and so things are frozen in time. And one of the things about this is that we need tools that keep things up to date. So I'm talking about nonprofit research, probably certainly university, and certainly multiple country involvement if one were to do what I'm talking about as a serious project.
Sorry for using the example of a commercial project, Bob, but doing full proper research like that is a similar kind of commitment. I mean, if you have someone in Europe who would be able to initiate something like that, it would be interesting to look at, but we all have day jobs, so to speak. So I think we couldn't do a full work effort for one single project. And as you know, the UK, where I am, we left the EU to our great detriment. So my university and other organizations don't have much say in Europe anymore. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and it's worth thinking about. But Fabien, I've kept you muted for too long. I'm sorry.
Just very quickly, from what I understood, so I don't know Immerse, but I would say any non-open source solution would probably be interesting in the moment to learn a few things, but as a building block, again, based on what I naively and superficially at least understood, will never be good enough, because it seems you really have to go back to, let's say, the foundation of the display and how to put text correctly, and how they're going to provide interesting things to learn from, but as a building block, at least I don't see it.
Yeah, fair point. Brendan?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to add a note, a thought around what Bob is saying and kind of the conversation around focusing on a project for funding. I am pretty strongly in favor of finding an avenue that we can hone our focus in on. And whether or not that would be something that would be aligned with acquiring funding to do a research project, I'm not entirely sure. But I do love the idea of using the existing body of work that we have. And this has been a concept we've touched on a lot. A frame like Bob's information murals, and if we didn't feel particularly excited about nuclear waste, we can choose one of the others. There's plenty of work that he's done. Those are the types of projects that I think we can take to a new medium using, say, VR as an example of what this group can do. So that's really just the high level thoughts on this, but definitely interested in something like that. Now, what it takes, that would be another discussion. What is the scope of the project? What would we want to aim for? But I am hugely in favor of taking an existing body of work that we appreciate and honing a focus as an artifact.
Thank you for that, Brendan. So my frustration on that point is the flip side of the coin of the diversity of our larger community. So that's the hard and good part. So I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago on, entering the new virtual reality thing, isn't it amazing? And some of the feedback, including from my good friend Adam, what the hell are you doing talking on all of our behalf like this? I don't mind quoting you, Adam, because your points were fair enough, absolutely. But the thing is, we now have a domain, a WordPress site. And so far, there hasn't been anybody posting anything other than me, right? So if we're going to do something together, we need to find a place that we can communicate what we want, right? And I hope that my early writings, like in the journal, I don't own the journal, I'm the editor, but if you guys want something in it, it's gonna go in there. Like my editorial control over the future of textbooks has been very simple. If someone's passionate about text, it goes in. It's not for me to judge whether it's good or bad because I'm not smart enough to know that. Someone in 100 years could maybe tell us. So it's the same thing here, but like Adam and Brendel are very good at making rather than feeling comfortable writing an academic thing that maybe Mark Anderson would be great at. I certainly am not. So therefore, my question to the community, and starting with you, Adam, since you have your hand up, is what is the best forum to go about deciding what to do? Because in these groups, sometimes we discuss it a bit and then we go into demo mode and we go in different directions. So Adam, please, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, when I joined this community, I followed it, for over a year, and then I joined early last year. I posted things, I wrote things on the Circle community. I got no responses, basically. Then a few of the articles were deleted, the whole thread, because you reorganized things. Late this December, we decided to, or there seemed to be a consensus of using the futureoftext.org and do a site there. Suddenly you had a very passionate lab idea that you implemented and registered a completely new domain and started a blog without really checking in with us. So it felt like it was your passion project that was kind of a bit impulsive, that it wasn't what we discussed before and almost agreed on before. So we agree on many things and more things than we do, and it's a bit hard for me at least to follow with everything. And if I post at this .info site, will it be there in a few months, or will there be a new site? Will we rebrand things? I'm a bit hesitant to put my effort into that, especially when it takes so much time for me to write as a non-native English speaker. And I'm also a bit, I want my word to be not so, we have different styles. I want them to be so precise that I can't even formulate anything maybe, and you are a bit more, use grander words, and so we have different styles there as well. And so that's what I have to say, why I'm not really writing. And also it takes time, so every second I do that is a second I can't do coding, and I rather prototype things and talk about them, because I feel that is more worthwhile at the moment. So every hour I write is an hour I don't code, basically, and I don't have much time writing that. Yeah.
Okay, so for me to respond to that, you basically made a very eloquent argument in favor of visual meta there. And the reason I say that is, a circle costs me $80 a month to maintain, right? It's insane. There was some basic people, but it's all locked away. It's all their own community. So I'm trying to basically get rid of it. And I've tried to have a community around things. It's not money that I can really afford to throw away. I can afford to invest it in our community, absolutely, but I can't afford to just throw it away. So that's why, we tried it. It didn't work for our type of thing. So the reason I say that what you said was a passion plea for visual meta is that I really, really feel super strongly that if something is worth saying or expressing, put it in a format that is robust and that doesn't require a server. So that is, despite everybody hating PDF, including me, if we put things in there, it doesn't matter what format we use, right? We can cite from it, we can refer to it, we can have it on our hard drive, we can print it out, we can do whatever. That's why I'm so passionate for document-based discourse. Every single one of these calls we have, I have automatically paid for machine translation, and then I have to assign who is speaking when. It takes quite a bit of time, and it's worth it, because at the end of the day, I put all of this in a monthly journal that is just our transcripts. And the special hosted one, we have a wonderful human, Danilo. Hi, Danilo, who will be maybe listening to this. We put that in so that we can have that. Because yes, doing Circle or even our current one, it is not ideal. And I'm very glad that Bob is in here screaming and shouting in the very good sense, Bob, that, let's be a little serious about our discourse. And Adam, you said a couple of weeks ago when there was something came up, we have to be serious. I agree. Fabian is the new person here, so he's come into a family argument in the best sense. So if we have ways to discuss this or what to do, rather than Adam being fantastically clever, coming and showing us 500,000 words and us being speechless and not wanting to do, that would be useful. Anyway, Fabian, please, some sense, please.
Well, first, it's really, the topic itself is really interesting. And how passionate you all are. I think it really shows how much you care. So first of all, it is beautiful. It's tension, but again, it's because you care. So I think that's great. And on a more, let's say, technical note, I think there is always tension for, again, naively, let's say somebody like Adam, who just made a prototype, who finds the building itself of the prototype is a process. And then I interpret Adam. So you tell me, you stop me if I'm wrong, but then at some point you need to collapse it to another medium that doesn't give it justice. But still, as I think, Freud, you were expressing, is that medium that, let's say, a PDF won't do justice is going to be a way to archive it, preserve it over time, and eventually make the conversation progress, get feedback, etc. So from what I can tell, at least, and from my own experience also, it is a normal tension. And I cannot want to even begin thinking of a new prototype if I know I'm going to have to do a PowerPoint about it at the end. But then at the same time, in order for it to progress, for other people to give feedback on it, I know it will have to collapse to another medium that's going to be, let's say, this flat screen or this document.
Okay, Fabian, thank you for that. That was hugely valuable. And so here's the thing, for the benefit of you and a reminder for everyone else, especially Bob, what visual meta is, because I really think it can help, because it doesn't collapse. That's the whole point, right? So as I said in the beginning, you have in a normal book, one of the first pages, you have copyright information. Imagine putting that at the end of the document, plus title equals, date equals, all that stuff. But you also had, here are the headings, what levels they are, and who authored them. Here are glossary terms, and here is every single citation in the document in an orderly, human and machine readable way, right? So easily what we can do is also take Bob's mural behind him on the wall, mark it up in such a way, and maybe even use an equivalent of image map or whatever it might be. So the whole point is that, and this is why I talked about the game Crisis. And Bob, you're right, not every single thing has to be every single detail. That's why it's a game or a model. But it means that if you have pieces that are self-aware and can communicate what they are to other pieces, amazing things can happen.
Yes.
For instance, Adam made a very, very useful citation map based on hypertext proceedings, which was not using visual meta, but the idea was that visual meta could be slotted in and it would work, right? So when I talked to Dini Grigar, who co-founded the, forget right now, it doesn't matter. She pointed out that visual meta is the first analog digital hybrid medium, because if you print out a document that has visual meta and you scan it and you run OCR, you've lost no metadata. So
I'm all for this. I like it. I've heard you discuss it over and over again. I agree. It's past. We got it. It's done.
Fabian
it may have some need. It may have some next steps. Yes.
Fabian is new. Fabian is new today, so that's why I had to explain that. Okay. Hang on, Mark. Just really.
So one of the problems in the group is how to have a cumulative agreements on what is next, and I don't see us trying to have having agreements.
Bob, can I please finish this little thread? Because it's kind of on that. So the point is, so next week I'm presenting visual meta to the American National Institute for Standards Organization, NISO, with Vint Cerf, right? So these are the things that we're doing. And the thing that I had to spend a month discussing with Vint to persuade him is that VR, AR is amazingly important for work. He also said it's for games and social. He now agrees it's important for work. So that is why I asked you, Fabian, in the beginning of this conversation, that is, imagine if there is visual meta stuff, couldn't that be read in VR, AR? So that the thing that Bob that is brought up, which is so important, so instead of just having a flat document, you can take the table of contents out for the side. You can choose to turn on and off lines to anything that it cites. So you can build this environment because the semantic value of this rectangular document is available to you, right? So this needs to be presented, and it's going to be presented very soon. And also, Adam has been hammering me about using the same logic with HTML, because of course HTML is better than PDF, other than for archival reasons. Of course it is, no question from my mind. So where do we put that stuff in? Because one thing that I'm really scared of is that humanity goes into VR and AR as though it's a ghetto. It cannot be a ghetto. It has to be the same knowledge that we have in other media. You have to be able to take, just like you did with Remarkable, in and out. But there's the final bit of my little speech here. When you go into an augmented environment and you put things everywhere, it should be storable in a flat form. So when you go out of that and deal with it in flatland, let's call it that, and then you go back someday in augmented, everything can go back to the same space. And that's where an appendix can do that.
I agree, and this is a beautiful way of outlining a proposal, what you just did. And I have been telling quite a number of people, write proposals, not articles, for journals and so forth. Write it, it was a beautiful outline for such a thing. And it just needs one step further. The next thing that we're proposing to do, because it's essential for the next step, is this, and please fund that as a research project.
Well said, Bob. Mark, what do you got?
I was just going to sort of round the circle of this in the sense that I don't think there's a lack of seriousness. Part of the thing I think is that a number of people here are drawn from sort of disparate perspectives, and what they're actually interested in doing is moving the ball. And sometimes it's easy to do it. The thing is, doing it because no one told you couldn't is often easier than sitting around being allowed to tell when you're allowed to start. And I think some really interesting things, I look at the last year, I mean, I just think, for instance, the visualizations that Adam did last year are really fascinating. It's been really interesting showing those to some people who have got really, really excited in a way they wouldn't get excited about the subject matter. What they're actually responding to is the visualization. When you talk to them, they suddenly, you know, it's this thing, most people in the world do not understand what metadata is. It's just the exhaust product of their organization, except they know they have a lot of it and somehow it's expensive and worth something, but they don't know how. It's these underpants gnomes thing. But actually beginning to put things together, this is where visual meta is a good glue, which is where the sort of visualizations we've been exploring in non-VR and AR have been interesting. And in fact, they map across, because one of the other things is, okay, so what do we need to build? It's actually quite difficult to do that within a formal structure. So it in no way argues against what Bob's been suggesting. It's a somewhat Faustian bargain. I mean, the point is that there will come a point where, you know, all or some of this may end up pushing into a project. Whether it's necessary to commit to it at this point, I don't know, mostly because most of the people making traction here, you know, are doing something already. So to actually commit to a project, it's kind of difficult, because who are the people going to be in the project? Because it might not be the people doing it. And I think so that's why there might appear to be a reticence. It's not a sort of lack of seriousness of intent. It's just that there's a dynamic, and just this fact that sometimes it's easier to make progress if you're not having to sit in front of people in the peanut gallery, you know, kicking the tires and saying, oh, can't I have it in 15 point? Or, you know, why is it not green? Who have no understanding of what's going on, but just feel they need to stick their oar in. Whereas actually here, we've had really interesting discussions that I find are always illuminating. A, because I learn stuff, you know, about what might be possible, and B, it raises both interesting challenges, but also really interesting insights.
Yeah, Mark, thanks. That's a good point. I see Brendan has to go in a second, but one point and then one question. The point is, we've also started a dialogue with the NIH, the National Institute of Health in Americaland. Okay. And it has given me a whole new sense of energy for this is all about visual meta, by the way. This is not VR, even though I'm passionate that these two things should support each other. And the reason I'm so excited by it, imagine every single medical or scientific document knowing what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to call it right now. I think I found the single biggest productivity hack of 2021.
I think somebody might need to mute.
Yeah, Ms. Peter. Yeah.
Anyway, because one of the things that visual meta can support is, if you have a graph, it can know what the XY axis is. So you can do a query like, show me everything that happened in September, October 1994, and there's 1 million documents, and an instant later you have it. Because structured data, we all agree, is good. This is just a super cheap and easy way to do it. So that is a hugely important and valuable thing. And I really think, and this is all Brandel's fault, that we are now living in a VR, AR world. We're living in an augmented world. Sometimes we're going to need flat plan screens, right? It is backwards. It is, we've stepped in and we have to do it. So finally, from me right now is asking you, Adam, as a case study, how do you want to write? Do you want to do it like Twitter style, where I take what you've written and put it into the journal? Because I completely understand your reticence of not knowing if the platform's going to be there. That's why I'm glad we have the journal, which is a PDF we all keep at the end of the month. Please think about that. And then I have a question for you and everyone. Can everyone here who wants to, as of Fabian, you're very welcome to be a part of this, of course, write by Monday what you actually want to do to help address Bob's point? Is that a fair thing, whether it's email, blog, or whatever? Can we all do that by Monday? something. Even if it is just talk, that's absolutely fine. If someone says, if, you know, whatever it might be, can we start doing it in writing? Okay, there's enough nodding. And I see you have your hand, Peter, but if Adam could just, if he's ready to reply, if he could go now, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, but the thing is that I get this question every second meeting or so by you, Frode. What do you want to build? What do you actually want to do? And it seems like my answers are not enough for you, because I don't say visual meta maybe in my answer.
No.
I want to build text prototypes of different sort to understand the medium better. I want to show them. I think videos are better documentations for interactive things, where you talk through, show a demo, talk about it, maybe discuss it in a group, and ask questions. I think that is a better documentation for understanding interactive things that I can't really, and that is why we have so few good interaction design books, because it's so hard to capture it, and it only look dated on printed on a page. So it really needs to be in video if the software can't be around anymore. So
Okay.
that is. But I can't. You ask me the same question every second meeting. What do I want to build? Actually, and I've said it before. I prefer to do things where you do high quality stuff, high quality thinking, active reading, where you're very engaged with text. I don't want to throw a million things. Now I throw 500,000 characters on screen, and I was a bit reluctant to do that because it's too visual. I want to do high quality thinking support.
Okay, but in that case, Adam, do you want to start a YouTube video series?
No, it takes too much time to do that,
Okay.
but I can have discussions with you, and I can show my prototypes now and then when you feel that it's appropriate. Take a few minutes.
The reason I ask you every other meeting is because you've been busy lately, so you haven't been able to be at every meeting, which is absolutely fair enough. But you know, you did say it's time to get serious, and I think that prototype explorations are unquestionably important. But I also feel that the data that goes in and out is important too. And I have offered to completely change everything that I do to support you. You know, from author, with you and Brandel, I wouldn't mind doing a whole new way of posting into VR. But I think that, I mean, both Doug and Ted, close friends. Doug changed the world, of course, but then the world changed and he didn't change with it. Ted, and I will say this on the record, he was never interested in import-exports. So all he ever had was demos. So I don't think we're being serious if all we do is watch you do really cool shit. And I say that as a compliment. Sorry for using the word shit. I didn't mean it in any way to be derogatory. I can do really cool things in Photoshop, but so what? Right?
And I think you should do that. If you want to help us build things, you should do more in Photoshop instead of writing the manifesto style articles. I don't think it will change the world a bit doing that, even though it feels good for you maybe.
Okay, Adam. I know you're Scandinavian and you have a specific way of working, but it can be quite hurtful when you say things like that and things that you've said about what I've written before, because yes, I can do things in Photoshop, but it will be flat and it won't be interactive, right? And it isn't my function or Mark's function, who, you know, both of us being non-coders, to support you. We're supposed to support each other, right? And today I nicely had to nudge you to show, but you know, I don't exactly know where I can give feedback. I said, I want to see this in VR. You want to do it in a browser. It's a very difficult conversation because we don't have a working relationship. And as a community, this is why I think everybody should clarify what they need so we can have a really good workflow and dialogue with each other, right? Because when you're talking about me not changing the world because I don't do things in a prototype, you know, I am the one presenting to NISO next week. I am the one who's presented this to the BBC. I am the one who's had this academically published. I am the one working with the inventor of the internet on this. So please don't demean writing manifestos, because manifestos are a way of looking at the infrastructure as well. I don't think it's more or less. So if we can find ways to really support each other, I think that would be wonderful.
And they are a step toward writing proposals, I might say. I agree. Absolutely.
Anyway, oh, Peter, you have your hand up from earlier, or is it new? Sorry.
From earlier, I posted a link to an upcoming webinar from Library of Trinity College talking about some of their digital collaboration initiatives around some format that I'd never heard of before, called International Image Interoperability Framework. And that sounds like something that should have visual meta attached to it. So we might want to have a look at that. It looks like it overlaps our time, though, depending upon what the time frame offset is for Dublin relative to you. So we might want to have some of us go to that webinar and report back to the group, or have all of us register for the webinar to see it and then meet as a group after it ends. Just possibly, but have a look at the little write-up they have on the registration page, see if it's something that you think would be valuable to us. Also, I think both your approach and Adam's approach dovetail together nicely, and it's just a matter of figuring out how to combine the two worldviews to get something that's an even stronger gestalt than we would have either way.
Yeah, I don't think Adam and I disagree on that, right? I mean, we're not here because we hate each other. You know, we are here as a very disparate group because we're trying to do something along the same lines, and yeah. So that's all good. But okay, who will help me make visual meta for HTML? Hands up, please. Somebody has to. Oh God, Mark, you're the easy catch here. You live right down the road. Brenda, will you help me? Adam, will you help me? Fabian, will you help me?
I still don't really understand the function of visual meta in this context. And so, like I said, and you know, I've said this a number of times, and unfortunately, maybe it hasn't come across right. I say that I am not academic, not to be self-denigrating. I obviously have a pretty high view of myself. It's that I'm not familiar with a literary academic tradition of writing things for the communication of people to people. What I do online is I post short clips on Twitter and YouTube of my explainers. And so it's actually pretty foreign to me. So my reluctance is that it's not something that I personally get a lot of value out of when I see it happen, to have long form articles and things. And so it's not something that I lean into in order to do those things. I work in a commercial world where demos are the main sort of currency of exchange. You know, I work at this has nothing to do with what I do in my day job, but I work at Apple, and the way that we do stuff there is demos, and we demonstrate these little proofs of concept, and then those spark conversations, and then we talk about appropriateness of fit in the same way that Bob was sort of describing proposals. But that is the sort of the currency of exchange, is those demo snippets that show those opportunities, such that you can then have conversations that facilitate bigger demos. And writing very rarely comes into it.
I'm not asking anybody to write long pieces, but you know, it is some kind of thing to hook it onto, like the article that I put up that started with Adam's screenshots, and all of your comments are in there. They're now in our journal. But on this specific question of visual meta and HTML, what I mean is when you have an HTML page, generally, yes, you can have the author. It's generally not there. The publication date is generally not there. I know those tags can be in the meta. A list of citations so that you can actually analyze them are not there. Definitions are not there. The level of headings, yes, they can be there, but it doesn't actually say if someone else wrote it. There's so much meta that can go in there. But what I passionately want, really, really passionately want, is Fabian, Brandel, and Adam, who code in this space. I want the rest of us to give you a document that when you go into your world has rich stuff that you can play with, and we can say, no, I don't want to see it like this. I want to be able to do it like that. Because right now, you guys are doing magic, and we're basically just sitting cheering without being able to give you proper feedback. The information is really important. Yes, Mark.
I just think I think the alphabet soup of this code versus that code, actually, we're getting ahead of ourselves. So I think, I mean, in a sense, that's self-evident when the point you get to it. And going back to sort of Brandell's point about academic communication, part of it is dealing, frankly, with all the tire kickers who just come around and say, oh, it's not very interesting. Because they lack the intellectual capacity to look ahead. So part of it actually is giving them just the steps to move ahead. No, that sounded pejorative. I don't really mean it like that. But the point is, not everyone, you know, there are so many things I don't know and will never understand that I'm quite happy to try and put my shoulders to the wheel of things where I think I do have an understanding.
Yeah.
And one of the things, you know, again, one of the things I've really learned from just, you know, experience of jobs along the way is that, you know, thankfully, not many people really need to look at what all the data means, but somebody does, and not just engineers, but people who actually understand the purpose of it. Because most people just want to consume it or make money off it, and that's fine. But so part of what Visual Meta has been doing has been just nudging this along, and eventually everyone will catch up. And the whole part of Visual Meta is it doesn't have to be written in anything. In a sense, if you want, if it makes one more comfortable, it's a concept, which is sort of how I think of it. But it sounds more concrete if you say it's a code, because the people who want it to be a code can be happy it's a code. But really, it's a conduit, and it's part of making you know, meaning sustainable over time and things being self-explaining, and therefore it can link and it can build on all sorts of things. And I think that's the way I see it. And so, you know, my minor part in this really is to try and sort of chip away at that. And it's really thinking through, oh, what's the next fatuous, you know, objection that's going to come up? Okay, what do we need to put in place to just keep the debate on track, so that this little seedling, this germ we have, that I think will grow into something quite powerful, regardless of what it looks like in code term in due course, has a chance to live and thrive.
Thank you, Mark. Fabian?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a naive idiot, and I learn by doing. So for the next meeting, I'll make a prototype on Visual Meta, even though I don't know now what it is.
Strong words. Strong words. Adam, you had your hand up and then it came down. I'm sure you have a comment on all of this.
You asked directly if I can help you with the Visual Meta. I think I prefer working from the other way around. Finding out what we want to do first and see what data we need to do that, instead of I still agree with you that it would be nice if HTML had or something else, all documents had rich data of all forms about the authors and every date and everything in order. But for the purpose of what we're doing, I preferred working the other way around. What do I need to do to chop up a document and have it useful in 3 dimensions? What data do I want to show here? Oh, maybe it's the author name I want here beside the text. Then I need author in the metadata and work backwards a bit more. So start with the job and then find the way of getting the metadata there, all the way down to the technical formats that we save things, or databases, or whatever we store things in. So I don't want to start in the other way, to throw lots of, to do a complete, because it has been done so many times before. There are so many metadata formats, XMP, Dublin Core, all the RDF formats, schema.org with hundreds of different formats. The problems have never been that there are no formats, it's that people don't fill in forms.
This is really important, Adam. Thank you for that. 2 things. First of all, I think we can consider the NIH people as an audience. Basically, people who are trying to do important health stuff and they're reading documents that exist. How can we augment their reading? That could be one of our cases. But also, I have to tell you a difference between what I mean by Visual Meta and what I think you said there. Because yes, typing in all kinds of stuff about a document, that is absolutely not what Visual Meta is. The only document that an author has to write is their own name and the title of the document. Everything else is structural. It's there for free without any work whatsoever in the manuscript. That's what's so important. So when you make a citation, everything is done. When you make a heading, everything is done. But when you go to a horrible PDF, it's lost. Or when you do it to WordPress or whatever, it's lost. So yes, all the Dublin core, all that stuff, as Mark was pointing out, I don't give a flying monkey what Visual Meta is encoded in. If someone has Dublin core and they could be making an effort to do that, because yes, that is work, put it in there, right? If you have some metadata you want to say about the document, just stick it in there and say what it is. We don't care. So thank you for highlighting that, because adding metadata is expensive when it is actually added rather than an inherent part of the structure of the document. But before I give the mic over to Peter, thinking just generally about NIH documents, as in semi-academic scientific documents that people need to read, is that something that can give us a bit of a focus for that kind of reading for now? Imagining taking that into a virtual environment, goodness gracious me.
I think that could be very interesting. Given that I'm now thinking about the proposal that I put in volume 2 of the Future of Text, which has to do with the Million Diagram Project, which is not just any old diagram, although I didn't say it in the article. I mean really good diagrams, million really good diagrams, which would each have visual metadata attached to them, would be a whole different way of representing a subject matter. And we're, and I give an illustration of it. So yes, and the illustration is from the medical community.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good example.
And so, yeah, boy, NIH is already ahead of us by using structured abstracts in their major journals, which they didn't just have a discussion group about it, by the way. They ended up having a decision-making group that the editors of the major journals said, we're all going to decide to do this. And then they said, if you want to write an article for our journal, then you write a structured abstract. And everybody went along because they wanted to have their articles in the journals. And I'm planning, by the way, for volume 3 to write about structured abstracts for my next piece.
Thank you, Bob. That's perfect. Adam, I think you're about to say something as well about the NHS kind of user group.
Yeah, but, I have my partner is doing her PhD in the medical field in clinical cancer research at my dinner table, and I'm IT support doing fancy diagrams with code and so on. So I have a certain insight to that process, and the thing is that I'm not really sure that reference management and that is and the medical articles takes they have lots of references, but it's not really that kind of data that it's a hard work, or it's menial work, you have to do it, but it's not that it's reading articles, understanding methodology of other articles, so it's reading support and understanding support for that is much more important to understand other people's research and judge it or understand the flaws and the benefits. So there are many other things that are maybe more important in the process than having kind of the structured information in the back of the article. So that's why I'm much more into active reading parts for the whole text. I think it's creates more value for more people to have that kind of support, and that's what I'm.
Adam, don't you agree that it's easier to have structured and to have active reading if the data is at least somehow structured? I mean, isn't it a useful thing to know that a heading is a heading?
Yeah, is, and
So,
and
so
it's
isn't when the stuff I'm talking about, isn't it just to support the kind of visualizations you're working on? You know, I'm not a database guy. You know, I'm a visual guy, Chelsea School of Art, the whole package and all of that. The stuff that you're doing is what's exciting and important. You know, the interactions we can have, no question, but there's got to be something behind it. And I'm just saying, when someone is writing stuff, they have all this amazing structure of their documents that's thrown away.
Well,
Let's just retain it. That's all I'm saying.
okay, I'll let you.
Anyway, Peter, and we have to wrap up soon. We're way over time today.
Yeah. I wanted to suggest the idea of using an epi markup to introduce visual meta. And epi markup's an idea I've been kicking around for a while. And the idea is it would be to have something that doesn't look at all like markup. There would just be statements in ordinary natural language that would be extremely restricted and be readily parsable, from which you could generate the visual meta. For instance, the first statement would be, this is epi markup. So the system would know that there was epi markup in the document, but it would look just like an ordinary sentence. The next thing would be, you know, my name is, and your name. And then we know that Frode Hagelin is the person who wrote this piece of epi markup. And to introduce headings, it could be, now we, and then whatever the phrase is, it's going to be the actual heading. So it would look and read like ordinary English, and there'd only be maybe at most, say, an upper bound of 8 or so canonical statements that an author could make to generate this. And it would be able to pass through email systems. It could pass through database systems. It wouldn't be JSON. It wouldn't be YAML. It wouldn't be any kind of a standard known existing format. Therefore, parsers looking for those formats wouldn't see it. It'd be invisible. It would look just like ordinary text. And then from that, we would generate, and that's like epigenetics, controlling the expression. In this case, the epi markup would control the expression of generating the content that would be extracted into the visual meta. And that could be a way of getting people to write it too, because I found, at least dealing with lawyers, if you show them anything that looks like a formal grammar, I mean, even if it's just like a heading followed by a colon or the simplest markdown, they take a look at it and their brain just automatically classifies it as, this is code, followed by, I'm a lawyer, followed by, I can't deal with code, followed by, I won't even think about this, no matter how simple it is.
Peter, I know you're trying to simplify, but it's kind of adding to the layers of kind of markup extraction. Most of this isn't actually metadata in that sense. Sorry, Mark is going to say something.
No, because I just think listening to what I heard Peter describing was one way of putting visual meta into something that doesn't basically have built-in concept of visual meta. So Fred, your tools have this built into it. The author has a deliberate intent that it will capture structure, it will capture citation information, it will capture glossaries and this kind of thing. If you had another context where that wasn't there, then so in essence, the concept that Peter's putting across strikes you as perfectly cromulent. I mean, it's just another way of getting to the same endpoint. Yeah. And I'm totally on board with his point that most people, unlike
Mark,
probably listeners here, glaze over.
Let's park that for a minute because Brandel has to go.
Okay.
But Brandel, in terms of a little bit of I don't want to keep bugging you and Adam about what kind of things you want to do and how do you want to contribute to the conversations, because we keep repeating each other. You have very much contributed in the. Oh, Fabian, are you running right now?
In 2 minutes.
Okay, I look forward to seeing you all on Monday. But Brandel, like the stuff you guys write in Twitter, that's what I'm talking about. If we could have that in the journal, fantastic. I'm not asking anybody here to write long academic pieces. I'm really bad at that myself, and I don't think that's the value. But it allows us to cite each other and to build a discourse. And hopefully that data can go into VR for us to read it there soon. I love you all. Okay.
So what's one thing I am working on? What an actual presentation of my general thesis is. The actual starting from like what Descartes did us dirty on through to what it means the sort of the Wikipedia of the future should look like. So there is I have the seed of a grand communication to that end that should be able to do a lot of those jobs. Rest assured, I'm thinking about that, and I've made some progress. But yeah, no, I can put the stuff that I put in Twitter in the journal. I don't object to that. I just mostly work with things that are primarily demos. So yeah, I will be happy to furnish those things. But in terms of doing more, I'm not sure where I would. And in terms of where the locus of interest sort of lies, it's in the mechanics. It's understanding what it is that we do. And so that's what I'm doing. I got recording voices and putting them in spaces in VR recently. Got a WebSocket thing, so I should be able to get the speech to text so that I can actually put this text in the space at those places within Quest via WebSocket connection. So I can do that, visualize the words appearing as well as the waveform, so that we can kind of scrub through them. So those are the kinds of things that I'm drawn to sort of reflexively, and the place where I can be persuaded, but comparatively gently, away from those things, because that's what I'm sort of fastest and consequently best at.
I think what you and Brandel don't understand is that we are at the beginning of this, and what you say matters. The demos are crucial, otherwise it's just chit chat, no question. But this is the beginning of this revolution. So to have down these arguments, these thoughts, these different perspectives is so important. And it's also so important that it's real data that goes in and out of stuff. Look forward to Monday. It was a good chat. It's tough, but got to do it, right?
Sorry, I need to run, but I want to say one thing. It is that capturing is indeed super important. There is nothing more frustrating than an amazing VR experience or something in a new medium that somehow you can't retranscribe and can't build on. So 100%. And thanks a lot for having me.
Very glad
Thanks for coming, Fabian. It's really awesome to have you part of it.
Bye.
Have a great week, guys.
And thanks for Brandel. Thanks for inviting Fabian. He mentioned that. So Adam, let's keep fighting, but let's keep building as well. I'm going to have to keep writing. And, oh yeah, Brandel did say he had to go.
Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah, that's it. But Adam, you have another minute. When I'm asking you about the visual meta HTML stuff, I want to serve you in this. I want to be able to give you stuff for your demos. And it can be just our basic journal chat. It can be whatever. But for you to have to scrape an old book that we've made is a bit pathetic, right?
It's not so much scraping because you exported it as an EPUB here, and I use the EPUB because the EPUB have paragraphs, and it has scraped it. The conversion software has scraped the PDF, so it's a bit it's a very circular way of doing it. So it would be fantastic to have that fine information directly from author to clean HTML with the kind of metadata that we're talking about. That would be very helpful. But at the moment, I don't know exactly what's missing and what we really need. So I can't really answer that question as precisely as you may want at this moment. So you can look into it.
You don't have to do the whole thing, but if you can tell me that the way that you want to see whatever's missing, let's say even author name in an organized way, just tell me and I'll put it in the gosh darn academic article that I'm writing. If it turns out that you were wrong and you want something else later, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? But just like for you, implementation is making it real. For me, writing it is making it real. So we got to do that together. And then we got to disagree. And then we can cite the fact that we disagreed so that we're building an intellectual shape of what we're doing here. So I think as long as stuff comes out, doesn't matter if we agree.
Yeah,
what I see in that is basically just gently bubbling to the surface things that are difficult to find. So they're either in there and not accessible, or or they are not described at point of receipt in a manner that it is conducive to the next step. So it's difficult. I can see at the far end of that, you don't know what you don't know until you find that you don't know it. So it's difficult to write down and say, this is what I need. I think it's an emergent process. Yeah. And this is also one of the reasons I was saying, well, I'm happy to try and build up stuff because, it's a sort of iterative thing. You give someone say, oh right, and you fix one thing and that just reveals the next layer of the problem. I think at this stage it's way too difficult to guess it, you know, soup to nuts and have the whole thing there. But what we can do is we can certainly nibble away at things. So in other words, you know, because PDFs are never going to get fixed, but if documents that want to produce data for the long term, which may have to produce PDFs, may also in a different sort of side channel, may produce something that just routes right around that.
Yep.
We have guests. I gotta go turn the oven on. It's my job.
Yeah. Okay. Take care.
Look, have a good weekend. Look forward to Monday. Hope you're all
Okay.
there.
Bye.